let's talk about something so powerful, so life-altering, so limitless, that when you truly experience it, you can't stay the same. I'm talking about God's love, not the kind of love that fades when you mess up, not the kind that depends on your performance. I'm talking about a love that chases you down when you run away, a love that holds you when everything else lets go, a love that never quits, no matter how far you fall. You see, so many people think they've disqualified themselves from love. They think because of their past, because of their mistakes, because of what someone said or did to them, that somehow they've fallen outside the boundaries of grace. But hear me on this. You can't fall out of what you never earned. God's love isn't based on your perfection. It's based on his purpose. It's not about how good you are. It's about how good he is. There's a moment in every life where you have to stop running from love and start receiving it. Because until you receive love, you can't give it. Until you feel forgiven, you can't truly forgive. Until you understand that you are loved beyond reason, you'll keep searching for validation in places that only leave you empty. So let's make this clear. God's love doesn't wait for you to have it all together. It meets you right in your mess. It meets you in the heartbreak, in the addiction, in the doubt, in the moment where you think, I've gone too far. That's exactly where his love shows up. The moment you say, I can't fix this, he says, I already have. The problem is not that God's love isn't available. It's that we often don't believe it's for us. We think it's for the saint, not the struggler. For the preacher, not the broken one. But that's a lie. God's love isn't selective. It's relentless. It doesn't pick favorites. It picks you. When you understand this kind of love, your life changes. Because suddenly, you stop living to prove your worth. You start living from your worth. You stop chasing approval because you already have it. You stop being afraid of failure because love has already claimed your future. Listen, love is not just an emotion. It's a force. It's the most powerful energy in the universe. It's what created everything, sustains everything, and redeems everything. Love is not weak. It's unstoppable. It's what turns pain into purpose, wounds into wisdom, fear into faith. And some of you right now, you've been praying for a breakthrough, asking for a miracle, begging for peace. And maybe God's answer isn't to change your circumstances first. Maybe it's to change your heart. Maybe he's saying, let me love you there. Let me fill that space that no person, no success, no achievement ever could. Because when love fills your life, everything shifts. You start to forgive the unforgivable. You start to hope again after heartbreak. You start to see yourself not as the world labels you, but as heaven defines you. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not what you've lost. You are loved fully, fiercely, forever. And that's what changes everything. That's what takes ordinary lives and turns them into testimonies. That's what makes broken people into healers, victims into victors, and wanderers into warriors. So today, stop trying to earn what's already yours. Stop trying to fix yourself before you come to God. Come as you are. He's not waiting for your perfection. He's waiting for your surrender. The greatest sermons on God's love aren't the ones you hear. They're the ones you live. Every time you choose kindness over judgment, you preach his love. Every time you forgive when it's hard, you demonstrate his grace. Every time you get up when life knocks you down, you reveal his power through you. The love of God isn't just a message, it's a movement. And when it fills your life, you don't just experience love, you become love. You walk into rooms and bring light. You speak into darkness and bring peace. You become the evidence that God's love changes everything. So don't just talk about it, live it. Don't just believe it, breathe it. Let it heal you, restore you, and ignite something inside you that the world can't put out. Because once you've experienced that kind of love, you'll never be the same again. You'll walk differently. You'll speak differently. You'll forgive differently. You'll live differently. You'll live differently. And the world will look at you and say, something about them has changed. God's love meets you where you are, not where you think you should be. That truth alone has the power to shatter years of guilt, shame, and striving, because most people live their lives trying to become good enough to be loved, accepted, or worthy in the eyes of God, others, and even themselves. They think, if I fix this habit, if I stop this sin, if I pray more, serve more, do more, then maybe, just maybe, they'll finally deserve love. But that's not how divine love works. God's love isn't waiting for your perfection. It's already pursuing your brokenness. He's not waiting at the finish line for you to get it all together. He's walking beside you in the mess, in the chaos, in the uncertainty of your life. There's something deeply liberating about realizing that love doesn't begin after your mistakes end. Love begins in the middle of them. When you've fallen, when you've failed, when you've done the very thing you swore you'd never do again, That's where his love meets you. That's where he whispers, "You're still mine." And that's what most people miss. They think love is a reward for right behavior. But in truth, it's the reason you can rise again after wrong behavior. God's love doesn't wait for you to become clean. It steps into your dirt and declares you worthy. Some people believe they've drifted too far, that their past is too heavy, their mistakes too deep. They think God has turned his back because they did something unforgivable. But that's the greatest lie the enemy could ever tell you, because no matter how far you run, love runs faster. No matter how dark it gets, love shines brighter. You don't have to climb up to heaven to find God's love. It descends right where you are. It meets you in the pain of a breakup, in the silence of regret, in the chaos of addiction, in the darkness of depression. And it doesn't flinch. It doesn't back away. It stands there with open arms saying, "I'm here. I've always been here." When life hits hard, we often think God's love has withdrawn. When we lose the job, the relationship, the dream, we think maybe God's done with me. But it's in those very moments that his love digs deeper. Because his love isn't circumstantial, it's constant. It's not based on what's happening around you, but what he's already declared over you. You are his. You belong. And no failure, no storm, no opinion can change that truth. His love is not conditional upon your behavior. It's rooted in his character. And his character doesn't change with your circumstances. There are people who spend their whole lives pretending to be somewhere they're not spiritually. They wear masks to appear faithful, strong, pure, or perfect, but inside they're breaking. They think God loves the version of them they show to others, the one who's always fine, always positive, always smiling. But God doesn't love your mask. He loves your truth. He loves the part of you that's honest, raw, uncertain, and real. That's the part he meets. That's where transformation begins, not in pretending to be whole, but in admitting you're not. Because when you bring the real you to God, you finally give him something real to heal. We've been conditioned to believe that love must be earned. From childhood, we learned that love comes after good behavior, after success, after doing the right thing. But God's love flips that entire system upside down. He doesn't say, "Change and I'll love you." He says, "I love you, and that love will change you." You don't have to clean up to come close. You come close to be cleaned. Love is not the prize at the end of your transformation. It's the power that makes transformation possible. Think about the stories in Scripture. Every encounter with God's love began with someone in a broken state. The woman caught in adultery, the tax collector despised by everyone, the thief hanging on a cross. None of them had time to fix their lives first. None of them earned it. Yet love met them right there, in the failure, in the shame, in the hopelessness, and turned their stories around. That's the power of divine love. It doesn't wait for your perfection. It calls it out of you. It doesn't love you because you're worthy. It makes you worthy. When you start to believe that love meets you where you are, something shifts inside. The pressure to perform starts to fade. The fear of not being enough starts to break. You stop striving to prove your value and start resting in the fact that you already have it. You start living from love instead of living for it. And that's when peace enters. Because love removes the need to impress. It replaces performance with presence. You no longer need to be perfect. You just need to be open. Even in your doubts, love is present. Even in your anger, your questions, your fears, love doesn't retreat. God doesn't love a future version of you. He loves you now in this moment with all your flaws, confusion, and contradictions. He sees the things you hide, the parts you wish were different. And he doesn't run. He leans in closer because his love isn't repelled by imperfection. It's drawn to it. Where others see weakness, he sees opportunity. Where others see failure, he sees potential. That's the beauty of divine love. It finds value in what the world discards. And when you let that love in, truly let it in, everything starts to change. Not because life becomes easy, but because your perspective does. You begin to realize that you are never alone, never abandoned, never forgotten. You begin to see that every closed door, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It was love guiding you, molding you, shaping you into something greater. There will be times when you don't feel God's love, times when pain feels louder than peace. But love isn't a feeling. It's a foundation. It's there even when emotions fade. It's there when you can't sense it, can't see it, can't understand it. Love is the thread that weaves through every season of your life, holding you together when everything else falls apart. So stop thinking you have to climb to God. He's already come down to you. Stop believing you have to become more spiritual, more disciplined, more holy before you can experience his love, because he's not waiting for you to arrive somewhere. You're already there. Love meets you in the middle of the journey, not the end. It meets you in the valley, not just on the mountaintop. It meets you in the tears, in the questions, in the silence. And once it meets you there, it never leaves. You can't fall out of what you never earned. His love is unconditional. That's one of the most freeing truths you will ever understand in your life, because for so long, people have been trapped in the mindset that they must do something to keep God's love, as if one wrong move could make him take it back. We've been raised in a world that says love is fragile, that people only stay if you behave, that affection must be maintained through performance, approval, and success. And then we project that same fragile understanding onto God. We think his love works like the world's love, temporary, conditional, easily withdrawn when we fail. But that's not who he is. God's love is not built on your behavior. It's anchored in his nature. You didn't earn his love by being perfect, and you won't lose it by being broken. That's the beauty of grace. It's not something you achieve. It's something you receive. It's not a prize for the righteous. It's a promise to the fallen. When you understand that his love was never dependent on your goodness, you stop living in fear of losing it. Because how can you lose something you never qualified for? God's love doesn't fluctuate with your emotions or disappear when you stumble. It's steady, constant, unshakable. It remains when everything else falls apart. Think about that for a moment. You can't earn what was freely given. You can't repay what was already paid for. Love, true love, divine love, was never a transaction. It was never, do this and I'll bless you. It was, I love you and that love will bless you. The problem is we live in a world that's trained us to measure love through results. If people treat us right, we feel loved. If they ignore us, we question our worth. But God's love doesn't work on those human terms. His love doesn't come and go with your mood or your mistakes. It doesn't diminish when you fail or increase when you succeed. It is complete, eternal, and unchanging. Every time you fall, he's still there. Every time you run, he still calls you back. Every time you break, he still says, I'm not done. Because his love isn't like ours. Human love can give up. Divine love never does. Human love gets tired. Divine love never fades. Human love sets conditions. Divine love says, even if you fail me 1,000 times, I'll still call you mine. That's the kind of love that doesn't just forgive you, it restores you. It doesn't just cover your past, it rewrites your story. There are people walking around today haunted by guilt, carrying the belief that they've disappointed God too much, that they've gone too far, done too much wrong, or stayed away too long. But God's love doesn't work like a light switch that turns off when you fall. It's more like the sun always shining, even when clouds hide it from view. You may not always feel it, but it's still there, burning bright over your life. His love doesn't need your perfection to function. It only needs your presence to be received. You see, religion often says, earn love by obedience. But relationship says, receive love and obedience will follow. One tries to work its way up to heaven. The other realizes heaven already came down to us. You can't work your way into grace. It found you first. You can't earn your way into divine favor. It was placed on you the moment you were created. That's what unconditional means. No strings, no scorecards, no finish line. It's love that existed before your first breath and will outlast your final mistake. So many of us live life afraid of falling out of favor with God. We think, if I mess up again, he'll leave me. If I doubt again, he'll give up on me. But you can't fall out of what you never earned. If you could lose his love, that would mean you had the power to control it. But love that's truly divine can't be controlled. It just is. You didn't cause it to start, and you can't make it stop. You can walk away from it, ignore it, resist it, but it doesn't go away. It waits, it watches, it whispers through the quiet, I'm still here. When you finally understand that truth, you stop living like a beggar and start living like a child. A child doesn't worry about being loved tomorrow. A child knows that no matter what happens, home is still home. That's how God loves you. Not as a master to a servant, but as a father to his child. A child can fall, fail, disobey, but they never stop being family. They never stop being loved. That's what unconditional love does. It doesn't cancel you when you break. It carries you until you're whole again. And when that realization hits you, fear loses its grip. You stop being afraid to pray, afraid to return, afraid to believe again. Because now you know his love doesn't shrink when you sin. It stretches deeper to pull you back. His love doesn't reject you when you fall. It reminds you that you belong. The power of God's love isn't that it keeps you from falling, it's that it keeps holding you even after you do. So many people confuse discipline with disconnection. They think if life gets hard, if doors close, if pain arrives, then maybe God's love has left them. But love doesn't abandon, love refines. Love doesn't disappear in struggle, it deepens there. Because unconditional love doesn't promise a life without pain. It promises a presence through it. It doesn't always change the circumstance, but it always changes you within it. You can spend your whole life trying to earn something that's already yours. You can spend years chasing approval from others while ignoring the unconditional approval that already rests on you from heaven. When you believe you must earn love, you live in anxiety. But when you understand you're already loved, you live in peace. You start to see life differently. You stop trying to earn worth and start expressing gratitude. You stop trying to impress and start to rest. You start to love others not because they deserve it, but because you finally understand what it feels like to be loved when you didn't. Unconditional love is the most radical force in existence. It doesn't make sense to the human mind. It's not fair. It's not logical. But that's why it's divine, because it reaches where logic can't go. It finds beauty in the broken, strength in the weak, purpose in the rejected. It doesn't see you through the lens of your past. It sees you through the promise of your potential. That's what makes it life-changing. It loves first, heals next, transforms later. And when you've been touched by that kind of love, you stop fearing distance. You stop counting how many times you failed, because love doesn't keep score. It doesn't say 3 strikes and you're out. It says, I'll stand here until you remember who you are. You can run, but you can't outrun love. You can fall, but you can't fall out of its reach. You can hide, but it will still find you, because unconditional love doesn't stop at your limits. It moves beyond them. You may not have earned it, but that's the beauty of grace. You don't have to qualify for it, perform for it, or chase it down. It already found you. It's already written into your story. It's not waiting for a better version of you to appear. It's embracing the real one right now. And no mistake, no distance, no season can take that away. Real transformation begins when you receive, not when you perform. That's the truth that breaks the chains of striving, guilt, and exhaustion that so many people live under every single day. We've been taught from a young age that effort equals worth, that if we just work hard enough, pray long enough, prove ourselves deeply enough, then somehow we'll earn transformation. But that's not how God works. Transformation isn't the result of your performance. It's the result of your surrender. It doesn't come when you try harder. It comes when you finally let go. It begins the moment you stop striving to become something and start allowing God to do something within you. Because the power that changes lives isn't human will, it's divine grace. For years, people try to perform their way into peace. They think, if I do all the right things, if I look spiritual enough, if I never make a mistake, maybe I'll finally feel whole. But that's not transformation, that's exhaustion. Because performing doesn't heal the heart, it hides it. It creates an image of progress while the soul stays stuck in the same pain, the same fear, the same patterns. True transformation doesn't start with you trying to become perfect. It starts when you realize you don't have to be. The moment you stop performing for love and start receiving it, everything changes. Because the love you receive without condition becomes the love that rewrites your condition. Transformation isn't about polishing your behavior. It's about renewing your identity. And that doesn't happen by force. It happens by faith. It's not about proving how good you are. It's about believing how good God is. When you truly receive His grace, it begins to reshape your entire internal world. The bitterness starts to melt. The fear starts to fade. The old habits begin to lose their power. Not because you're trying harder, but because something stronger has taken root inside you. That's what happens when love is received. It grows, it expands, it heals, and it transforms everything it touches. We live in a world that glorifies performance. People measure your value by what you produce, how much you achieve, how well you can keep it all together. But God isn't impressed by performance. He's moved by honesty. He doesn't want the version of you that's pretending to be fine. He wants the one that's ready to be real. Because He can't transform what you hide. He can only heal what you bring into the light. The moment you stop pretending and start receiving, grace steps in. Grace doesn't need your perfection. It thrives in your vulnerability. The place you think disqualifies you is often the very place where transformation begins. Some people think transformation is about fixing their behavior first. They say, when I stop doing this, when I stop thinking like that, when I finally change, then I'll be worthy of God's presence. But they have it backwards. You don't fix your life to meet God. You meet God to fix your life. Change doesn't begin with willpower. It begins with surrender. Because as long as you believe transformation depends on you, you'll keep failing. But the moment you realize it depends on Him, you'll start growing. That's the paradox of grace. The less you strive, the more you change. The more you receive, the more you become. There's a peace that comes when you finally stop trying to perform for love. You realize you don't have to earn what's already been given. You don't have to chase what's already chasing you. You simply receive. And in that space of surrender, your heart starts to soften. The walls start to fall. You stop trying to control everything and you start to trust, because trust is the soil where transformation grows. When you trust that God loves you even in your imperfection, you begin to live from a place of freedom rather than fear. You're no longer motivated by guilt or shame. You're motivated by gratitude and grace. Receiving is an act of humility. It says, I can't do this alone. I can't fix myself. I need help. And that moment of honesty is where power meets you, because as long as you think you can perform your way into transformation, you're relying on your strength. But when you receive, you tap into His, and His strength has no limits. It reaches into the areas you can't fix, the emotions you can't name, the patterns you can't break, and begins to change them from the inside out. That's what real transformation looks like. It's not external modification, it's internal renewal. It's easy to confuse progress with transformation. You can change your habits, your routine, your goals, and still carry the same brokenness inside. But transformation doesn't just make your life look better. It makes your heart new. It changes how you see, how you think, how you respond. And that's not something performance can produce, because performance says, I'll change so I can be loved. But grace says, you are loved, and that's what changes you. Performance is exhausting because it depends on you. Grace is empowering because it depends on God. And when you finally understand that, you start to live with freedom instead of fear. There's a story behind every person who has truly transformed. And if you look closely, you'll see that their turning point wasn't when they tried harder. It was when they let go, when they stopped running from grace and started receiving it, when they stopped hiding their wounds and started exposing them to the light. Because transformation isn't the result of more effort, it's the result of more openness. It's not about striving for acceptance, it's about standing in it. When you realize that God already accepts you, you stop performing and start becoming. So many people think surrender means weakness, but surrender is not giving up. It's opening up. It's the point where you stop fighting grace and finally let it do its work. The moment you surrender is the moment God begins to rebuild you, because what you release, He restores. What you hand over, He heals. That's the beauty of receiving. It's not passive, it's powerful. It's the decision to believe that you are already loved, already chosen, already worthy, even before you change a single thing. And from that place, transformation flows naturally. It's not forced, it's fueled by love. Transformation that begins with performance will always leave you empty because it's rooted in fear. Transformation that begins with receiving will always leave you full because it's rooted in love. Love gives you the strength to keep growing when it's hard. Love gives you the courage to face what you've been running from. Love gives you the patience to walk through the process without giving up. And that love can only be experienced when you stop performing long enough to receive it. You don't have to earn God's love to change. His love is what changes you. You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to accept it. You don't have to force transformation. You have to allow it. The reason so many people stay stuck is because they're still trying to perform their way into what can only be received. But when you realize that transformation starts with acceptance, not achievement, you begin to live differently. You start to see that grace was never a reward for the strong. It's the foundation for the weak. And it's in that weakness that strength begins to rise. Because real transformation doesn't start when you try to become worthy. It starts when you realize you already are. God's love turns pain into purpose and failure into fuel. That's one of the deepest truths you can ever experience, because every human being walks through moments that feel like the end. Moments when pain feels too heavy to carry, when failure feels final, when you wonder why certain things happened the way they did. But if you look closer, if you step back and allow your spirit to see through the lens of faith, you'll begin to notice that the very things you thought would break you are the same things that built you. Because when God's love is involved, nothing is wasted. Every heartbreak, every loss, every rejection, every failure becomes raw material in the hands of a creator who knows how to turn ashes into beauty. There's a kind of growth that only pain can produce. It's not the kind that comes from comfort or success. It's the kind that comes from struggle, the kind that shapes your soul when nothing else seems to make sense. You see, pain exposes what performance hides. It reveals what you really believe, what you truly value, and what you've been relying on. And in that moment of exposure, love steps in not to condemn, but to redeem. God doesn't cause every pain, but He never wastes one. He takes what was meant to destroy you and transforms it into something that develops you. He takes what felt like failure and turns it into fuel for your next level of strength. Some of the most powerful people on this earth are the ones who've walked through the fire and realized they weren't alone. Because pain introduces you to the kind of love that doesn't abandon you in the storm. It shows you that God's presence isn't proven by the absence of pain. It's revealed by his closeness in it. That's the shift that changes everything. When you realize that his love doesn't leave when life hurts, you begin to see that pain isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's not there to break you. It's there to build you into someone who carries more compassion, more depth, more strength, and more faith. Failure is one of the most powerful tools in the process of transformation when you let love define it instead of shame. Because failure is not the opposite of success, it's a necessary part of it. Every failure carries feedback, every setback carries seeds of wisdom, and every time you fall forward if you're falling in faith. But that only happens when you believe that love still surrounds you, even when you've fallen short. When you understand that God's love doesn't walk away when you fail, you stop being afraid to try. You stop living paralyzed by the fear of imperfection because you realize that failure is not fatal. It's fertile ground for growth. God's love doesn't protect you from pain. It gives pain purpose. It's what takes a mess and makes it a message. It's what turns a breakdown into a breakthrough. When you're walking through something hard, it's easy to think, why is this happening to me? But maybe the better question is, what is this teaching me? Because love doesn't just comfort, it cultivates. It's not only a soft place to land, it's a force that pushes you to rise again. When you walk through loss, love reminds you that endings are often disguised beginnings. When you walk through betrayal, love reminds you that not everyone leaving is a loss. When you walk through failure, love whispers that what looks like defeat might actually be direction. If you look back at the hardest seasons of your life, you'll see that they didn't destroy you. They defined you. They forced you to grow, to change, to depend on something greater than yourself. That's what divine love does. It uses pain as a sculptor, shaping you into who you were meant to become. Every scar becomes a testimony. Every wound becomes wisdom. Every tear becomes the water that helps new life grow. Because when love holds your pain, it can't stay meaningless. It has to become meaningful. Failure is one of the greatest teachers in the school of purpose. The moments that embarrassed you, the projects that didn't work out, the people who walked away, none of it was wasted. Failure strips away illusion. It humbles you, centers you, and reconnects you to what matters most. And if you let God's love walk with you through it, you come out stronger, not bitter. Because love has this way of transforming disappointment into direction. What feels like rejection today can become redirection tomorrow. What feels like loss can become launch. The difference lies in whether you let love interpret your pain or let fear do it. When love leads, pain doesn't define your identity. It refines your character. It teaches you empathy for others who hurt. It teaches you patience when life doesn't go as planned. It gives you depth that surface level comfort never could. Love knows that without pressure, there is no progress. Without stretching, there is no strength. Without pain, there is no power. So instead of asking God to remove every difficulty, maybe it's time to start asking him to reveal the purpose behind it. Because if you can learn from it, you can lead through it. And when you've been through enough pain and survived, your life becomes a beacon for others still walking through their storms. There's a sacred beauty in the process of being broken and rebuilt by love. It's not pretty, it's not comfortable, but it's powerful. Because what breaks you open also allows more light in. What humbles you also heals you. You begin to understand that every loss, every failure, every unanswered prayer had love hidden in it somewhere, guiding, molding, strengthening you in ways you couldn't see at the time. That's how pain becomes purpose. That's how failure becomes fuel. Because love refuses to let your story end in defeat. When love fills your heart, even pain becomes productive. You begin to see how the very things you cried over became the very things that equipped you. The heartbreak that made you question everything eventually made you appreciate love more deeply. The failure that made you doubt yourself became the foundation of your wisdom. The delay that frustrated you became the setup for divine timing. Love's perspective changes how you see everything that's happened to you. It removes the bitterness and replaces it with belief. It takes away the why me and replaces it with thank you. Now I see. You can't always see it while you're in it. Pain never feels purposeful when you're living through it. But love has this incredible way of revealing the purpose in hindsight. One day, you'll look back and realize that what you thought was breaking you was actually building you. You'll see that the doors that closed were protecting you. You'll see that the moments you thought were wasted were actually preparation. Because love is always working behind the scenes, Turning what was meant for harm into something that helps you grow. Failure isn't the end of your story. It's often the beginning of the chapter that defines it. The people who make the biggest difference in the world are rarely the ones who never failed. They're the ones who refused to stay down. And what kept them going wasn't pride, it was love. The love of God that said, you're still chosen. The love that whispered, get up, I'm not done with you. That's the kind of love that uses your failure as fuel. It doesn't erase your past, it redeems it. It doesn't ignore your pain, it integrates it into your purpose. That's how love turns everything around. It doesn't take away the struggle, it transforms it into strength. It doesn't eliminate the storm. It teaches you how to dance in the rain, because when you're filled with divine love, nothing that happens to you can be wasted. Everything that hurts you becomes something that helps you grow. Everything that broke you becomes something that builds you, and everything that tried to end you becomes the very thing that empowers you to begin again. The greatest sermon on love is not spoken, it's lived. Words are powerful, but actions are louder. You can preach about love all day, quote every verse, memorize every scripture, and still miss the heart of what love truly is. Because love isn't something you say, it's something you demonstrate. It's not measured by how well you can talk about it, but by how consistently you can live it. Love that only exists in words is an echo. Love that exists in action is impact. Real love doesn't need a platform. It needs a heartbeat willing to serve, forgive, and show up even when it's hard. There's a kind of authenticity in lived love that no sermon can match. When people see you choosing kindness, when it's easier to stay silent, forgiving when it's justified to hold a grudge, helping when no one is watching, that's when they see the real message. The sermon of your life speaks louder than any message you'll ever preach. Every smile, every act of compassion, every moment of patience in the face of irritation, every gesture of mercy, those are the verses people remember. Because love lived out has a way of piercing through defenses that words can't reach. Some of the greatest lessons about love you'll ever teach will come from how you handle the people who hurt you. Anyone can love those who love them back, but loving the ones who disappointed you, betrayed you, ignored you, that's when love becomes real. That's when it carries divine weight. Because love that only works when it's easy isn't love, it's preference. Love that endures through pain, love that forgives when pride says walk away, love that serves when ego says stop, that's the kind of love that changes lives. That's the kind of love that reflects something higher than human strength. And that's the sermon the world is desperate to see. You don't need a pulpit to preach love. Your life is the pulpit. The way you talk to people, the way you treat strangers, the way you handle conflict, the way you respond to criticism, all of it is preaching something. People may not remember your words, but they'll remember how you made them feel. They'll remember the peace you carried, the patience you showed, the grace you extended. That's what leaves an impression. Love lived out isn't loud, but it's undeniable. It doesn't need applause. It creates transformation simply by existing in action. There's a silent power in consistency. Anyone can act loving for a day, but true love is proven in repetition. It's easy to be kind when life feels good, but what about when you're tired, stressed, disappointed? That's where love's authenticity is tested, because love isn't an emotion. It's a decision. It's waking up every day and choosing to represent something greater than yourself. It's deciding to respond with grace when anger wants control. It's choosing to listen when you'd rather argue. It's showing up when you don't feel appreciated. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's the kind of love that changes people without needing to convince them with words. When you live in love, your presence becomes a sermon without sound. The peace you carry becomes a message of hope. The way you show up in difficult spaces becomes a reflection of something eternal. People start to wonder why you don't retaliate, why you don't gossip, why you choose understanding instead of judgment. And that curiosity opens the door for transformation. Because when you embody love, you become a mirror that reflects what divine love looks like in motion. You become a walking example of what faith looks like when it's real. You don't have to convince anyone. Your life becomes the evidence. There's nothing more inspiring than someone who lives their message. When your actions align with your beliefs, you create authenticity that words alone can't produce. You become a living sermon written not on paper, but on the hearts of everyone who encounters you. Love lived out is contagious. It multiplies. When someone feels truly seen, valued, and cared for, it awakens something in them. It reminds them that goodness still exists, that kindness still matters, that compassion is still powerful. And suddenly they start to live differently too. That's how one life lived in love can ripple across generations without ever saying a word. Love doesn't demand the spotlight. It works quietly in the background. It's the mother praying for her children when no one sees. It's the friend who forgives without an apology. It's the stranger who helps without expecting recognition. It's the person who keeps believing in others when everyone else has given up on them. Those are the true sermons of love, the ones lived in humility, in patience, and faithfulness. Because love's power isn't found in how loudly it speaks, but how deeply it touches. It's not in the noise, it's in the nurture. Living love isn't always easy. It challenges your pride, your comfort, your expectations. It calls you to go beyond what's convenient and into what's sacrificial. Love requires vulnerability, the willingness to be misunderstood, rejected, even hurt. But that's the beauty of it, because love's strength isn't proven by how much it's received, but by how much it gives. You can't fake love lived out. You can't pretend to have compassion. It reveals itself through action. And every act of love you live becomes a sermon that plants seeds of hope in places you may never see bloom. The truth is, people don't need more lectures about love. They need more examples of it. They need to see forgiveness in action, patience in practice, and kindness that doesn't expect anything in return. They need to see love that stays when it's hard, that gives when it's costly, that believes when everything says it's impossible. That's the kind of love that softens hearts, heals wounds, and restores faith in humanity. And it starts with you choosing to be the sermon, not just speak one. When you make the decision to live love, you begin to notice the world differently. You start seeing opportunities to serve instead of reasons to complain. You start responding with compassion instead of criticism. You start realizing that love isn't limited to romantic feelings or emotional highs. It's the daily choice to bring light into dark places. And when you live that way long enough, you don't just inspire others, you transform them. Because love in motion has power that words can never match. Living love is not about perfection. You'll stumble, you'll get it wrong, you'll react in ways you regret. But even then, love teaches humility. It teaches you to apologize, to forgive yourself, to keep showing up anyway. Because the goal isn't to live perfectly, it's to live authentically. When you live from love, you allow grace to flow through your imperfections. And that grace becomes part of your sermon too. People don't need to see a flawless example. They need to see a faithful one. They need to see someone who chooses love again and again, even after failing to do so yesterday. Every act of love becomes a divine echo. Every moment you choose compassion over criticism, patience over pride, peace over power, you preach without saying a word. The way you live becomes a reflection of the love that lives inside you. And that's what the world needs now more than ever. Not more noise, not more opinions, but more people living as walking demonstrations of divine love. Because when love is lived, it doesn't just inspire others, it awakens them. It reminds them that something greater is possible, that faith isn't just believed, it's seen, and that the greatest sermon ever preached isn't spoken behind a podium. It's lived in the heart of a person who chooses love every single day,